Okay, so we'll start 4 lines from the bottom on page Peites. The line begins with the word toiv. Can't complain about that. So, we're saying that in his bonus there is the hergish, there's the sense of the goodness of Elokus, and that is the catalyst that ultimately brings about the next step. And this will be, we're going to stop right after the call on 4th line from the bottom. V'hainu, and what we're saying is hergish toiv hadover, that from feeling the goodness of the thing, bo ha-hergish comes along another stage in hergish, eich sh'hadover toiv loi, the principle how this is good for him.
Hergish is sense of, right?
Huh?
Hergish is this having sense of. Hergish.
Hergish is feel, right. In general, hergish is no longer the pure intellect, meichi. But within that, there is the hergish, all the way to the point where he's margish how this is good, and from this comes how this is good for him. There's a personal involvement. And the Rebbe explains in the parentheses, how does hergish hatoiv, the feeling, sensing that the goodness, how this translates to hergish toiv loi, of sensing that this is good for him, is two different worlds. The goodness is the goodness of the Elokus. Toiv loi is how it is for him. So how does that evolve further into toiv loi? So he says in parentheses, ki b'derech klal, because in overall, in general, hu ba li'inyan hamurgosh, he had now reached to the phenomenon of murgosh, of the feel, different than it is in the chokhmah, in the sechel itself, which is not a feel, which is just a pure knowledge. And once he came into the inyan hamurgosh, and the phenomenon, the world of murgosh, the next stage of murgosh that is good for him is not that far away. Because murgosh, in any kind of murgosh, even if it's just feeling the goodness of itself, that feel is no longer pure intellect. It is a personal experience. Ubal inyan hamurgosh. Alright, now after this one emphasis, this is kind of going back a little bit. Sichli. How did he come to murgosh? We kind of skip that stage. How did he get into murgosh? Into a feel, even feel the highest level of feeling of the good, how good it is, the goodness of it, which is also not sechel. How did he get to that? So it goes back to what we discussed before, because there is in him from hispielut sichli, an intellectual hispielut. And the hispielut sichli, this is purely intellectual, where in sechel he recognizes in sechel the preciousness and the greatness of this inyan that he has now reached to recognize. This is called hispielut. Hispielut, the principle of hispielut is that it is a personal experience. Even though at this point the personal experience is entirely pure, it's sichli. It's just a question of recognizing the truth. Nonetheless, because it's a hispielut, that way it by definition touches him. And therefore, okay, continue on 3 lines from the bottom. From a hispielut sichli, from this hispielut. I'm sorry? Hispielut sichli. Excitement, so hispielut excitement, sichli, intellectual excitement. Bo ha-hispielut murgeshes. From this comes the next stage of hispielut murgeshes, a hispielut of that he feels. This is the level, as we said before, hergesh hatoiv, and then from this comes midas. Hispielut sichli, I don't know if I can possibly explain that, but we're all intelligent people. It's a different kind of hispielut than hispielut murgeshes. Hispielut sichli is pure intellectual. But within the intellectual realm itself, there is the union that is being comprehended or viewed and recognized, and there is also the sense in the intellectual level of the quality of that which he understood. What did I understand? Even though it's still sichli, nonetheless, there's an element of the hispielut. Hispielut sichli is a rational, is a reasonable way of the sechel to take this profound realization. You know, with the sechel itself, even though it's geared and it's focused on stripping all extraneous interferences just to understand and to know the truth of this thing, in that itself there is a union of hispielut. Let me give a very simple presentation of this. Two times 2 equals to 4. You expand on that and you say, and you go all the way to 100, 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000. You can go through this process, this increasing of numbers, indefinitely. And each time that number is increased, you simply recognize the logical process that brought you to this conclusion. But then, as the numbers increase, it's inevitable that in the sechel you should be reflecting, what did I just say? 1,000,000? 1,000,000,000? Can I surmise what 1,000,000,000 is? Can I surmise what 1,000,000 is? So even though you came to it in a plain and simple logical process, yet the fact that you understand and you recognize that this is 1,000,000, which is different than 1,000,000,000, and so forth, this is a sechel recognition. That already allows, that already points at this sechel has an intellectual understanding. It is not just knowing something, but he relates in sechel to this which he knows.
As opposed to when it's 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000.
Excuse me?
When it's 1,000,000,000 or 1,000,000,000, it's a different story.
He senses the difference. Not just he knows numerically difference, but in his sechel he senses this is a different thing, even though it has nothing to do with him. If you sit in judgment and two people are arguing in front of you, and you conclude that Reuven, you have to give Shimon $1,000. You can say it in an easy statement. But then if you have to say Reuven, you have to give Shimon $10,000, that becomes a little bit more overwhelming. If you say give me $100,000, it becomes even more difficult. Even though you're saying entirely on the basis of the fact that you analyzed. It's not your personal decision. You analyze their arguments, and you say, Reuben, you owe Shimon $1,000, you owe Shimon $10,000, you owe Shimon $1 million.
So there's more excitement with the higher number.
Higher number is not excitement, but you sense the significance of what you're saying, even though you're saying it on the basis of pure reality, pure truth. This means he spoils sichli.
It's funny that sensing the significance is dafka by feeling. Sechel didn't sense the significance.
That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. He spoils sichli.
Yeah. Okay. So it's feeling within sechel still.
Yeah. He spoils sichli. The sechel explains to you this is a phenomenal statement. This is a very important insight, that even though sechel is a result of a simple logical process, but he knows what he is talking about. I remember hearing this kind of presentation, a story. There was a yeshuvnik. Yeshuvnik means the villager, who was totally illiterate. And he had in his house a REBBE, a teacher for his children. So this yeshuvnik received a letter from home. I'm sorry. How did it go? Yeah, the yeshuvnik received a letter from home from his parents. He couldn't read it, so he called his teacher, his resident teacher, to read it for him. The resident teacher started reading it, and he reads it. He turns around and says, Yeshuvnik fainted. He says, what happened? So when he came to, he says, what happened? You don't mean to say what you read just now. You read that my father died. He was reading a story correctly, but he couldn't relate to it. Hispielut sichli means that it's a sechel, but the sechel appreciates what he is saying. Because in sechel itself, there's a difference between 100, 1,000, and 10,000. In sechel itself, even though the difference is really on a much lower level. It's not just pure knowledge. Nonetheless, the sechel discerns the difference. This is called the sechel, it's called the sichli, because the sechel knows what he's talking about. Because it's a sechel inyan to know the difference between 100, 1,000, and 10,000. It's not just an emotional thing.
And this knowing what it's talking about is an element of hispielut, element of personal, emotional.
At this moment, it's not yet an element of hispielut, but because there is that recognition, there is hispielut setting in the next step. Once you know what you're talking about, it's inevitable that there should be some hispielut. So this hispielut sichli, even though it's sichli, nonetheless there's an element of hispielut. Once he is coming into the level of hispielut, the hispielut per se is not pure sechel. Hispielut per se is a hergish. He senses the difference between 100 and 1,000. This is not a logical thing. It's not a sechel thing. But within the sechel there's an infant hergish. So let's elaborate on this a little further. In order to pursue any sechel, any logical process, to understand something, to know how to go from here to 7, anything, to engage a sechel in anything, there has to be some sense of what you are engaging the sechel in. What's behind it? What's the value of this information? This is the difference between a human being and a robot. Human intellect and a robot who can also answer the same questions. But a robot is answering a question totally unrelated to any reality. A human being cannot think without a reality background. The sechel itself functions because he knows that there's reality.
What do we mean here by a reality?
Okay, let me explain. 1 and 1 is 2. How did 1 and 1 become 2? I said many times, why not 1 and 1 is 1 and 1? How did it become 2? What's the answer? The answer is that this 1 and 1 both exist in the same place, in the same reality. What allows this one to be and this one to be? Is it a separate force that allows this one to be and this one to be? Or there is a relationship between that which allows this one and this one? Let me explain. I see that we are struggling with this. You have a minyan of people. You have the shul. Every person comes to shul as an individual. What makes him a member of the minyan? He's in the same area, but he's not. Everyone stands in his own place. Each one stands in his own place. No two people stand in the same place. How are they in the same place? How are they related? And the answer is that the place where you stand, the place where I stand, is one in the same place. How is it? One in the same place. The answer is that which enables this your place to be is the very same force that enables my place to be. It's exactly the same thing. The Creator says this place should be. The Creator should be said that this place should be. Exactly the same presence. In other words, the real basis of all these places is one and the same.
The way that everything is part of a continuum, energy, mass, they're all people, they're all within one sense.
Ultimately, it's only between one reality.
So getting back to where we started, we said that a man cannot think without this reality background.
That's right.
So
therefore, when you say 1 and 1 is 2, what makes it 2? When you realize it's 2 because they're both in the same place.
And when he plans a trip, he starts with the background that these are within one spectrum, they're within one
Same world.
fabric of, they're within one world.
One world. That's how you plan this trip. This is why when God created the world, the order of creation of the world was first Shomayim and then Oretz.
Okay.
Because if the Oretz came first, how do you correlate one place of the world to another?
Whereas by Shemaim everything correlates.
Oh, that doesn't correlate, it's one thing.
It's all unified. So, in a sense, all human thinking starts with the results. It starts with...
That's right. Exactly right. Shomayim does not correlate different places. Wherever you look, you're looking at the very same Shomayim, not a different Shomayim. Okay, so this is called a sichli. It's sechel, but within sechel itself there is a realization of the reality of what the sechel is about. And that creates a hispielut. And from these hispieluts comes hispielut murgeshes. What's the difference between hispielut sichli and hispielut? Hispielut sichli is just a hispielut of the phenomenon. Murgeshes means I feel the difference. It's meant murgeshes, a personal feel of the difference. And from these hispielut murgeshes, this is when midas begin to surface. Do I have? Let me come through a little bit. Pardon me a second. You have it? You have that? The principle of Bilaviol Bozeh in this realm, in this phenomenon, where is the Ilaviol in this? It is Shebehis Boyanus Hasogas HaSeichel. That in this is Boyanus and Hasogas of the Seichel, but even though it's Seichel, Nimtsoyim Midos are present Midas. Midas are present within this is Boyanus and Hasogas, even though it's a Seichel element. The Inyan Murgash Anal. The Midas, this is Inyan of the Murgash. The Midas, this is the Murgash. The Hainu, which points to Her Yesh Toiv Hadovar. The Her Yesh, the feel of the Toiv Hadovar, the goodness of the thing, and the excitement that comes in its wake. These spoilers is not the reality of Mechin itself. This is really a reality of Midas, not Mechin, even though it's taking place in Mechin. But this is a Midas element. His spoilers, by definition, is a Midas element, not Mechin, even though it's contained within the Mechin. But it's not pure Mechin Be'etzem. It is contained within the Mechin. It is Midas contained within the Mechin. In essence, this is a Midas element. There is more to speak about Midas, but we'll come to it. Okay, so we are on the bottom, we finished Peitas. Page Kihim, Mahus Hamidas. The Mahus, the reality of this hispielut, is a reality of Midas rather than Mechin. Hispielut is not a Mechin in appreciation, yes, but the hispielut is not. The whole, and thus this is the principle I've mentioned all the way back. Hiskalelus ha'ol b'tei ha'ila, the incorporation and the inclusion of the olul b'tei ha'ila, inside the, within the ilu itself there is an olul.
Can I ask something from before?
Yes, just a minute. And as we explained, how does the olul materialize inside the ilu? Because the ilu itself has an element of the reality behind that which he knows, and that is the source of the olul ultimately. His spoilers. Yes, explain.
Raak hergestuurd door is balen zoals spoorloos zijn. De hergestuurd door is also Midas.
Yeah. This is Midas sechel. Any hergish is AYIN of Midas.
What was said before, the appreciation, yeah. What's Taf's appreciation in the fact in Mission Kodesh?
He's called a sichli. Okay, on top of page Tzadik. This actually is referring to his kalos in incorporation of the olul b'teho yilo within the yilo shuhu b'dakus adayin. And at this point, the olul is b'dakus adayin, is still yet b'dakus in a very subtle manner. It is not an identifiable presence. It is there like in in the back of his mind, but not in as a present that he relate to. But afterwards, noilad ha'olul b'his galus. Then the noilad is born. The olul comes to be born b'his galus in full cognition. B'mitzius murgeshes. In a state of mitzius, in the presence murgeshes, that you actually feel the mitzius. That comes the next step. First, it is included in the sechel. B'dakus adayim. From this midah, as it includes in the sechel, comes forth the birth of the midas, his galus as a mitzius murgeshes. And that's called midas. We still need a presentation, understanding. What is this hergish? Mitzius murgeshes. Why is the mitzius murgeshes in midas dafke? Okay, so this is it. Okay, this is it. Have a great day.
Was that last term, Mitzius Murgeshet, was going on a felt item?
No. Mitzius Murgeshes means a mitzius that can be identified by touch, by feel, not by reason.
So the Mitzius Murgeshes is not a sechel meaning at all.
No, not per se, but it's included in the sechel. Sechel allows for it. Because sechel, as we said before, sechel says, I'm talking about something real, something valuable. This comes in Mitzius Murgeshes.
Why not?
Like when you say 1,000, or you say $1,000. It's two different. 1,000 pebbles or $1,000. It's the same thousand.
It's a sechel Murgeshes.
No, this is midas within the sechel.
Fine, but why Mitzius Murgeshes?
No, not yet. No, not yet. Mitzius Murgeshes is when it's born from the sechel.
Oh, leaves that setting.
And it goes into the midas.
Okay.